Hello and welcome back to Sergeant Major Sit Rep. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you tuning in every week to listen to me ramble on here. But I try and bring you some good content. I appreciate the compliments and the comments, even the bad comments, because we can always improve. So if I'm not doing it right, let me know. Not the greatest at this. I forget to look at the camera, scratch my nose, all the things you're not supposed to do. I just discussed that with a reporter today. But it brings me to today's episode. So today we're going to talk about political correctness, the First Amendment, and how the Fort Worth Police Department came very close to violating someone's First Amendment rights, and it would have cost them millions of dollars. It's being reviewed right now by their command team and their IA. But today's episode is about one sentence that should bother every American that understands the Constitution. And I'll just lay it right out there. This is what she said. If someone is offended by what you're talking, then we have a problem. That is what a Fort Worth police officer said to two street preachers at the Fort Worth Pride Festival. I'm not going to get into the pride crap and all the grooming nonsense and all the external components of that and who was on both sides. I'm going to get into the First Amendment, what it protects, and why government should not be doing what they're doing. So that's this episode. Like I said, I'm going to stay away from all the other stuff. I'm going to try not to be too critical of this officer, even though this does show a lack of knowledge on the Constitution, a complete lack of training. Don't know how old she is, so she probably doesn't understand the origins of political correctness and how she's falling into the leftist trap. Or she is a leftist. Who knows? Didn't talk to her. We're trying to get the video now. Looks like because it's being reviewed by Fort Worth Police Department, the whole video is not available to the public. But once it is, I'm sure it'll be posted out there. I'll throw a copy out there in another episode and remind you of this episode. But that's where we're at, folks. We got, and this has been reported by Gateway Pundit, the Christian Post, a couple other news organizations, but just a few words. Nobody really did a deep dive into this. That's why I wanted to take this on this week. As I always do, I try to bring you the story within the story and things that are happening on the inside of government. And this is one of them because it's not being talked about. You got the Mexican government, President Sheinbaum, the cartel Karen threatening legal action over U.S. law enforcement action. We got bombing in Iran, which their president, he said the other day that they're going to continue to fight and they're not going to surrender. I think President Trump gave you that time. I think your surrender time was a couple weeks ago, and that's long past gone. I think he just wants you dead now. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But let me get back on topic. I don't want to stray too much today. I want to keep this pretty straightforward, let you know what's going on, because this is not an anomaly. It's happening around the country, not only with law enforcement, but with city councils, county boards, all of government. I have seen this myself in the House of Representatives, where free speech of a representative talking on an issue or speaking to a part of an issue gets called down by Democrats. Well, that's not politically correct to say that. Well, I don't give a shit. If it's factual and it's correct, then it's the right thing to say. And that makes me a right-wing nut job, but there we go. Okay, so let's lay it out here. So during this Pride event in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, you had Richard Pinoski and David Grisham, a retired police officer, mind you. They're street preachers on the street. Now, the police came and moved them away from the scene because they felt they were too close and could be a problem. They agreed, not a problem. Moved them to a public sidewalk a little further away from the event. Completely good. There's a potential there for a problem. They step in, take care of the problem. Everybody's in agreement. They go about their business. But where it goes wrong, really wrong, is when this officer tells them that they cannot preach. And if they offend somebody, she could issue them a citation. Now, a citation is really a misdemeanor charge. And people really don't know that. It's like a traffic ticket is a misdemeanor charge, but you don't go to jail for it. It's not something you're booked in, fingerprint photographed. But what is she going to charge them under? I mean, what's the crime? Where is her probable cause? She's trying to use speech that she doesn't like or says that somebody else may not like because it could be offensive as her probable cause. Now, I'm no attorney, but that's no probable cause. So there's no crime. There's no disorderly conduct. Religious speech is 100% protected by the First Amendment. They are not trespassing. They're on a public sidewalk. So where's their authority to do such a thing? There is none. And hopefully the Fort Worth police will do the right thing when they review the tape. But I mentioned political correctness, and I'm going to get into it in a minute, but I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as I go through this segment of the woke left, the political correctness, and I'm going to explain to you the origins of political correctness and where it came from and why it is so anti-American and contrary to the Constitution. But before we do that, let's talk about our favorite gold. As we do every week, we're going to talk about Augusta Gold Group. So let me ask something personal. How'd you sleep last night? I mean, really, did you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about bills, worrying about groceries, price going up every day, whether your retirement savings is going to be there when you need it? Now, I say these lines every week in some fashion or other, but this is something you really do. My wife and I have woken up in the middle of the night. We talk about our IRAs or 401ks. Where are they at? Where are they going? Should we do something else? Of course we did something else. We didn't scrap it. We added to it. And I'm going to explain how. So this is not imaginary. I've done it. You've done it. Everybody's done it. We know everything now is more expensive. Whatever money you saved up until 2020, 24% now of that value is gone. Not opinion, documented fact from the Fed. Not that I trust or believe the Fed all the time, but these numbers are solid. And if you do this globally, you'll see that the same occurrence globally is happening. So we have a constitution in this country, and it's designed to protect your property, the fruits of your labor, your savings. But your savings is still shrinking. Regardless of the Constitution, is getting robbed slowly and quietly by the hidden tax called inflation. This is a pattern of government overreach, eroding everything we work to build. Most retirements account, matter of fact, 100% of your retirement accounts are some way tied to the stock market. When it goes up, you do great. When it drops, you're exposed. So there's something you can do to defend what you built. Diversify your portfolio. Add positions that you currently don't have, is what I'm saying. So there's something you can do. Physical gold, real gold, the kind that doesn't care about the market, doesn't care about Washington, doesn't care about the dollar, doesn't care about any of the things. Augusta Precious Metals, leader in the field. They've been helping thousands of Americans protect their retirement for over a decade. A+, Better Business rating. They walk you through everything, 3 simple steps. Stays in your IRA, stays in your 401k, no taxes, no penalties. To get Augusta's free information gold guide, again, go to johnsgold.com or text John 35052. Bottom line, like I said, it's not about gold as an investment. It's a diversification. It's not all your eggs in one basket. And that's what they want to explain to you. It's about your peace of mind and working to save everything that you built from a system that's eroding it. Augusta Precious Metals are the very best at what they do. That's why I recommend them. Go to johnsgold.com or text 35052. Understand your options, make a decision that protects your family and your future. Okay. So before that short little break, we talked about political correctness, where it's coming in, where it came from, and how it's being used in modern society by the woke left. And unfortunately, this police officer, I don't know if she's Democrat, Republican, left, or right, but I do know that she is uneducated on the Constitution and way outside of her lawful authority. So the political correctness in this issue, it enters the frame when she treated offense as an operational trigger. If you offend someone, then I am going to do something. That was her operational trigger, not a threat, not violence, not obstructed, not targeted harassment, not fighting words, but offending someone. The political correctness model, speech is not judged by law, truth, or constitutional protection. It's judged by whether the preferred audience wants to hear it. Now, did I cause an emotional injury if I called somebody a name? Probably not. If I harass somebody or I offend them with my speech and they punch me in the nose, well, guess what? I probably had it coming. And if somebody offends me enough and I punch them in the nose, well, they probably had it coming. But for government to step in and regulate that, that is unconstitutional. And I hope these guys sue and teach this department training staff a lesson. This is not something that we can do in America. And that's the only reason I would want a lawsuit. I don't want to harm law enforcement, defund the police, or any of that nonsense. We support law enforcement. I come from that community. We'll do everything we can to back the boys in blue. But here's the deal: when administrative function, trainers, and all this succumb to the left for a few extra dollars, and they preach this stuff and they teach it to new officers, and they force older officers to do this kind of thing, to violate rights, then that's where you got to draw the line. So in American law and the Constitution, you are free to say what you want outside of targeted harassment, anything like that. But just standing on the open ground in public, preaching during a pride event that you might offend some child groomer, that's not a thing. They weren't blocking an entrance. They weren't creating an unsafe condition. They weren't screaming it with a bullhorn. They weren't doing anything like that. So she doesn't like it, and she says she's going to cite them if they don't stop or if somebody's offended. So tell me how in the world she could get to a probable cause or even a reasonable suspicion based on that. You can't. So she's working straight off ideological boundaries, and that's where this comes in. This is HR department DEI training language, campus speech code bullshit. The political correctness enforcement class wants us to believe is the right thing. And you want to do that on your campus, fine. But you put that badge on and you have the authority to arrest somebody as a member of government. Now you're becoming a constitutional threat, and we got to deal with you in a different manner. So the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. So that's what they were doing. That's their First Amendment right. The Supreme Court has repeatedly protected offensive speech. They let the Nazis walk through Skokie. They let people shout down military funerals, all these things. The Snyder-Phelps case in the Supreme Court, it was offensive speech near military funerals. The speech was hateful. It was ugly. It was unconstitutional, or it's un-American, but it was constitutional. The court held that you can be a dick as long as you're not threatening somebody. And it is what it is. And the court, as much as we don't like what they were doing, they have the right to do that. So the controlling principle of the First Amendment doesn't exist to protect polite speech. It exists to protect all of speech. Now, where does the political correctness come in? It comes into determining in the street by a police officer what is offensive, what is lawful, what is unlawful. And the Constitution doesn't say any of these things. It doesn't say you have free speech unless someone's complains or butthurt. It doesn't say you have religious liberty unless somebody's theology offends the protected class of another. It doesn't say that you can speak on public property until someone's upset about it. The government must stay neutral and stay out of it. The government can't pick winners and losers based on viewpoint. But the political correctness movement was started by Lenin in the Soviet Union during the revolution, and it was carried forth by Stalin afterwards, and there were boundaries put on speech. And political correctness is not simply being polite. That's how they sell it to you. Well, we don't want to offend anybody. Basic courtesy is voluntary in this country, and if you're not a courteous person and you're a jerk all the time, you're probably going to get your ass kicked. Courtesy says we speak with discipline. Political correctness says you speak with boundaries. So if I'm courteous and I'm disciplined, I'm polite to everybody for the most part. I try to get along because I'm disciplined, not because somebody is telling me you have to speak this way because it's the law. Courtesy is a social mechanism that if you're discourteous, somebody will let you know. And that's the First Amendment. That's why this Fort Worth case matters beyond one street confrontation. It's a dangerous part on the officer making bad statements, poor judgment, and threatening the constitutional rights of citizens based on what she thinks. So this is exactly how political correctness works. It doesn't defeat speech with better speech. It labels speech as either hate, violent, discriminatory, harassing, or extreme. That is the exact speech that the First Amendment protects. And the government must protect it at all costs. This demands government, corporations, schools, police, courts. They all have to treat everything the same way because it's the law. Now, if you're a corporate owner and you don't like certain things, you can fire somebody, but you can't take away their liberty because of it. So Stalin was really the king. Lenin started it, but Stalin was the king of this. And if you want to really get deep in the weeds, read Journal of Social and Political Economic Studies by Frank Ellis. It was written about the exploits of the Soviet Union between 1895 and 21, when Lenin was consolidating the revolutionary power and later went on to make the Soviet Union and the party. But the key concept was party line. Any speech that didn't hold the party line is not politically correct. So in a constitutional republic, we say whatever we want. I've been in the military, been in law enforcement, been in politics. I badmouth the government all the time because the government does a bunch of dumb shit all the time. And I call it out when I see it. So it is what it is. I can say that based on the First Amendment. It's not a revolutionary ideology that, if he tells the truth. No, what Stalin wanted was a vocabulary system that was an operating system. The Soviet model said, your speech must serve the revolution. The woke model, your speech must affirm equity, inclusion, gender ideology, anti-racism, all the protected bullshit narratives out there. The Soviet model punished deviation from the party line. So does the woke model. The woke model punishes the deviation from the approved Democrat talking points. The Soviet model called dissident counter-revolutionary. The woke model calls dissident hateful, unsafe, extremist, or dangerous language. Now, Nancy Gutierrez, Arizona House Democrat, we keep a track, a little tab system going on, how many times that woman says dangerous on the floor. And year before last was 32. This year was 28. Everything to this woman you say is dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. She's got full buy-in in this. The comments that she would make, along with her counterpart and some of their other Dems, when we would be talking, they would hear us talk. Oh, that's not even right. That's not even fair. One, you're not a part of this conversation. Two, I don't give a rat's ass what you think. And three, I have First Amendment right to say whatever I want. So I tell them to go pack. But the woke model that they are pushing is the exact opposite of what the Constitution allows. So the First Amendment assumes citizens have the right to argue over truth. Political correctness assumes approved authorities have the power to define that truth. So we hear that all the time. Well, I'm going to tell my truth. Well, there's only two genders. No, my truth says there's 5 genders. Well, your truth is fucking wrong. Sorry about your luck. It's wrong. There's possibly 3 genders: male, female, and lunatic. So that's how this works. They define the truth and tell you have to stick with that truth. It only produces one type of citizen, the type that wore the mask during COVID. Oh, I got to comply. It's not politically correct for my air to mix with somebody else's air, so I'm going to wear the mask. And they're winning. They're winning that. because people are sheep. They just follow along and do as they're told. They're compliant. Now, there's a time for compliance. You get pulled over by the cops and they suspect you of being a felon or just robbing a bank. I'm going to comply. Yes, officer. No, officer. Hands on the wheel. I'm going to follow exactly along. But that's for my safety. That's for their safety. And that's the right, normal thing to do. But am I going to follow along when government tells me I have to believe a certain truth? Absolutely not. I'm going to tell them to pound sand. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. Do I have the lawful authority under the Constitution to be wrong and be a dick? I certainly do. So that's two truths right there that the left doesn't want you to talk about. So not getting too deep into the weeds on the preaching, but the Christian speech and viewpoint discrimination is what she was using as part of her building of probable cause, and what she thinks she was issuing was a lawful order. But street preaching can be uncomfortable, especially if you're a street preacher in front of a whorehouse. That could be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's protected. So religious speech is not second-class speech. Now, I'm not covering deep into the religious aspect of it. I mean, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, but the founding fathers exclusively enumerated religion in the First Amendment. So it is definitely not second-class speech. It is, in my opinion, protected over any other speech. Religious speech and political speech are the two most protected forms of speech that there are. And when you have a government official telling you that you could be cited, even though you haven't broken the law, and you're exercising the First Amendment, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. And we see this more and more. And it's because these leftist kids, they don't know. They're out here pushing socialism and communism and all the nonsense, but they don't know the origins of the political correctness that they preach. They don't know it was a way to control the speech of a people. Now, Lenin knew, Stalin knew, and it was written in the Rules for Radicals, that the middle class, the working middle class, was the people that you had to attack because they actually held everything. The rich elites had a lot of money, but they also had power. The poor have nothing. So they established that class system, knowing the people in the middle, the small business owner, the everyday guy on the street that goes to work from 7 to 3 every day, or 8 to 5, whatever he's working every day. He goes to work. He's tired. He's got his kids. He's got everything he's got to do. He doesn't want any bullshit. He doesn't want to have to watch his speech after working all day, toiling for the scraps that he gets. He doesn't want to have to watch his speech. So they viewed that as the most dangerous because they were what? Stalin said, they are much too opinionated. We will force an opinion upon them by using political correctness. So the speech must be correct, not truthful, not factual, correct in the eyes of the party. And we see the leftists doing it right here. So this viewpoint discrimination of religious speech is 100% anti-constitutional. It is far against the enumerated protection put in by the founding fathers. So this officer, if she had an objective decibel reading thing and they were screaming real loud with the bullhorns, or they were creating an actual obstruction or a barricade to the groomer event, okay, she's got standing. Move them off before a fight breaks out. You're quelling the problem. So I get that, but they were doing none of those things. I'm going to drive this point home and I'm going to shut up and leave it here. They were doing none of those things. They were observing their First Amendment right only. And she intervened and threatened them with a statement of law enforcement action against them if they offended someone. That's it. That's what we got going on in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, the Democrats will climb all over this. Well, they were there to incite violence or harm to a protected class. They're not protected. You know who was protected? It was the street preachers, because they were speaking of politics and religion. The very First Amendment that allows them to do that. If I've done nothing else in this episode, is drive home the two most protected things in the First Amendment and what the government cannot impose upon you. So, no violence is violence. That's what they say. No violence is violence. When Antifa's out, the summer of love, speech can be wrong. Speech can be cruel. Speech can be offensive. It can be harmful. It can be condemned, debated, mock challenged, whatever. Speech is not violence. I mean, I can sit here and threaten the world with nuclear destruction. I've got the button right here. I don't, but I've made a threat. Now, am I going to be arrested for that threat? No, it's a dumb statement. Everybody knows it's not true, but that's where we're going with this. The left creates this false victim status, labels opposition as harmful, and then demands government power to neutralize the alleged harm. That's not tolerance. That's not even, what I told someone once. The left cannot tolerate the intolerant. They're intolerant of the intolerant. So this is soft totalitarianism wearing a badge, not a police badge, but a diversity badge. And it's crept into law enforcement. And the law enforcement failure on this point that I pointed out is law enforcement, police officers are not ideological referees. We're not speech therapists. They're not emotional support officers. They're there to enforce the laws of the state and the Constitution. They take an oath to both. So that means the officer must know the difference between the unlawful conduct and protected speech. They must also know what's offensive is generally protected. But don't call out speech as conduct just because the speech makes someone angry. That's legally dangerous and disingenuous. And I hope she pays a penalty for her issue there. And I hope the department has to pay out a little money, because if they do that, maybe they scrap this, whoever in HR decided this ridiculous nonsense, because there's a bigger picture than just one department, one officer. Today it's the Christian preacher at the Pride event. Tomorrow it's pro-life activists. Then it's parents at school boards. And then it's veterans criticizing a city council. Then it's citizens protesting whatever. This is lawful activity, folks. Lawful activity. Our response, obviously, we talk. Conservatives talk. We don't go out, break stuff, start a riot. I'm bringing this issue to you. You can research the issue on your own, and you can decide if I'm right or wrong. But that's your right, and it's my right to do it. Religious speech is protected. Political speech is protected. Political correctness has no authority over the First Amendment. A heckler's veto occurs when the government steps in and tells someone to stop speaking because the listeners may be offended. And that's what we have going on today. We're this close, folks. And we got to stop this nonsense, get back to the Constitution, get back to the rule of law, and make it happen. So until next week, hopefully I get my voice back. And until next week, train like they hate you, because they do.